Okay, guys, welcome to Parasha. I actually heard that we're going to have a slightly smaller class today because a bunch of people are in DC. So, call out to all of your classmates over there in America who are in DC right now fighting for Israel. But visit Hashem, let's speak a little bit about Parasha. Okay, here's the big question, people. You ready for the big question? Ready for the big question? Get thumbs up for the big question. We've been speaking Parasha the last couple of weeks. We spoke about Lech Lecha. We spoke about Avram Avinu. We had some awesome parashas. We missed last week, and I debated. Now, part of me was like, let's go back into it and let's follow the order. But then I'm like, no. I want to jump ahead to this week's parasha. This week we are in Parashat Toldot. Anybody whose video is working, if you want to put on your video, we're a smaller group today, so let's see each other a little bit. But I said, let's continue with this week's parasha. This week's parasha is Parashat Toldot. Okay. So we spoke about Avram for a couple of weeks. Now we actually are going to quickly jump with a little bit of Yitzchak and quickly jump to Yaakov. When we speak about the Avot, who are the Avot? Who are the three Avot? Who are the three forefathers? Easy question.
Avram,
Yitzchak, Yaakov.
Beautiful. Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Okay, so Avram we know is awesome. We know that Avram is great. He's the trailblazer. He's the Lech Lecha that we spoke about at length, the monotheist, changing the world, leaves it all behind, makes Aliyah, comes to Israel. Awesome. Yaakov, which we're going to get into in this week's parsha, we're going to have the story of Yaakov and Esav. It's going to be craziness between two brothers, major stuff with Yaakov and Esav. Okay. Yitzchak, number 2. Can anybody tell now? Quick, by show of thumbs up or thumbs down. Yitzchak was a great person. Thumbs up if he was a great person. Thumbs up if we like Yitzchak. Okay, one person likes Yitzchak. Awesome. Okay, 3. That's it. We like Skylar. We like Yitzchak. We don't like Yitzchak. Isaac is good. We like Isaac. Okay, we like Yitzchak. Beautiful. Nina, we like Yitzchak. Thumbs up.
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up. Okay, good. Awesome. So we like Yitzchak. Can anybody tell me what Yitzchak did? What made Yitzchak so great?
I think he was just great because he was supposed to be sacrificed.
Okay, Ben, excellent. Okay, first off, something that people sometimes forget is that the Akedat Yitzchak, the binding of Isaac, we normally think of it as a test for Yitzchak, for Avraham. It's Avram's greatest test. It's Avram's hardest test. So we normally think that Avram, towards like the last half of his life, gets the big test from God, and he passes the test with flying colors. Unbelievable. He's willing to sacrifice his son. But we forget that Yitzchak is also part of the test. That Avram's greatest test is actually Yitzchak's beginning of the storyline of what Yitzchak is really all about. Okay, so first off, the Akedah for Yitzchak was a big deal. Not only that, the whole concept of Yitzchak being willing to die for God. Okay, deep question. Is the test of the Akedah harder for Yitzchak or harder for Avraham? And why? Who had a harder test, Yitzchak or Avraham?
Abraham,
Why Avraham?
because he's actively killing his son, someone he loves, and he's still going to be alive to know that he was the one that killed his son.
Okay, I like that. Most would say that for a parent to have to give up their child, or in this case, to kill a child, is hard for God, is even harder than for the kid to be willing to die for God. People actually relate that a little bit to the soldiers in Israel. The soldiers are excited. They want to fight. They want to fight for the Jewish people. They have idealism. That for their parents, it's so much harder. That's how the psychologists look at it. That the psychology for the parents sending their kids off to war right now is so much more difficult for them. The kids who are willing to die for the Jewish people. But also, so we think of the Akedah as Avram's big test. But really, it's called the binding of Isaac. Isaac is the main. Yitzchak is the main name. Akedah Yitzchak. Anybody know why it's called the binding of Isaac? Why binding? Call it the almost sacrifice of Isaac. Isaac and the Mizbeach, Isaac and the altar. Anybody know why it's called the binding of Isaac? Any ideas? So on the simple level, Isaac is bound down because every sacrifice you have to bind down so it doesn't move. But the Midrash says that before Abraham was about to sacrifice his son, Yitzchak looked at Abraham and said, Abraham, Abba, can you tie me down tight? For two reasons. Number one, I don't want to flinch and kick you by accident. You're my Abba, I don't want to kick you. And number two, when you do a shechita, when you slaughter an animal, it has to be done properly. And if the animal flinches, it might not be kosher. If you're offering me up as a sacrifice, I want to be done in a kosher kind of way. So Yitzchak is saying, if I'm going to give up my life for God, I want to do it fully. So it's a massive test for Yitzchak too. That's what we call it the binding of Isaac. But ultimately, we normally move off to Abraham. But here, big deal. We think, okay, good. So that's number one. What made Yitzchak great? The binding of Isaac. Okay, what else? Any other big stories? Any other big stories that you can think of that made Yitzchak great?
Didn't he uncover the wells in Beersheba?
Okay, excellent. He uncovered wells. His father Abraham dug wells, and they got filled up by the Philistines, by the Plishtim. And Yitzchak redigs his father's wells. He's going to redig some of his own wells. He's going to dig some brand new wells as well. He digs wells. Okay, Nisim, I like that answer. Very good. I want to get back to that answer. But why does that make him great? He dug some wells.
Oh, because that's where Yaakov meets his wife. I don't know. One of those wells.
So a lot of people meet their wives at wells. That's actually a big thing. Yaakov is going to meet his wife at a well. Moshe is going to meet his wife by a well. It's a good bar. It's a good place to hang out and meet somebody. Okay, but the well that Yaakov meets his wife at and Moshe meets his wife at, different well. What's so great about digging wells? Okay, we need water. We need to survive. Water might be symbolically Torah. You can get all mystical on me. But let's say something a little bit different. This week's parasha starts off. The parasha is called Toldot, Toldot, however you want to pronounce it. It starts off with the offspring of Yitzchak. It starts off, Ele Toldot Yitzchak. These are the kids of Yitzchak, and it goes on to tell the story of Yitzchak's children and his progeny. There's a funny part at the very beginning, though, because at the beginning it says Yitzchak is named Yitzchak ben Avraham, and then it says Avraham was Yitzchak's father. So the rabbis come along and they say, why does the Torah say that? Why does it say, this is the story of Yitzchak, the son of Avraham? Avraham had a child named Yitzchak. When you told me that Yitzchak is Avraham's son, we already know that Avraham's his father. It's repetitive. Why is the Torah saying it just like in two different ways, the exact same thing? So the Midrash tells an interesting story. The Midrash says that that Yitzchak looked exactly like Avraham. When the Torah adds that Avraham was Yitzchak's father, that Avraham gave birth to Yitzchak is actually what it says. What it means, says the Midrash, is that they looked almost identical. It's like a father-son, where everybody looks at the son and says, wow, your resemblance is so much like your father. It's like beyond the shadow of a doubt that your genetics are Avraham's genetics. Now, why was that important? Why was it important for Yitzchak to look like Avraham? So the Midrash tells a side story. There were certain leitzanim, there were certain jokesters, mockers, people that were making fun of Yitzchak. And they were claiming that Yitzchak was not really Avraham's son. Anybody know why? Whose son would Yitzchak have been if he wasn't Avraham's son? Any ideas?
Esav.
No, Esav's going to be Yitzchak's son. We didn't get to Esav yet. Who would have been Yitzchak's father if not Avraham? Other guesses?
Amram.
Say again. Amram? Much later. Someone said Lot? Much later. Oh no, Lot's same time period, but no, Lot wasn't. Good. Lot was actually, according to Rashi, it's Sarah's wife, Sarah's sister, Sarah's brother and sister with Lot. That'd be actually really weird. No, not Lot. There's another guy at the end of last week's parasha named Avimelech. Right, 2 weeks ago's parasha named Avimelech. Avimelech was the Melech of Gerar. He was the king of the Plishtim, And there's a story that took place where Avram, it was a big famine, a second famine hit Israel, and Avram and Sarah moved to Gerar because that's where the food was. And Avimelech, and they did their whole trick. They did, we spoke about a couple weeks ago in Egypt. They did the same trick again, where Sarah Imenu says that I'm Avram's sister, and Sarah gets taken captive by Avimelech, just like she got taken captive in Paro's house. Now it's happening in Avimelech's house. And God comes to Avimelech in a dream, and Avimelech lets Sarah Imenu go. Only one problem. She was there for a night. Now, we know, the Torah tells us, that Avimelech, although he tried to sleep with Sarah, God didn't let him. God came to him in a dream. So Sarah never slept with Avimelech. But then Sarah goes back to Avraham, and this is right around the time when she gets pregnant with Yitzchak. So she got pregnant from Yitzchak, from Avraham. But because the time period was pretty close to that one night she spent in the palace, certain people were joking, and they were saying and making jokes, saying, oh, Yitzchak is really Avimelech's. Avram couldn't get her pregnant. They were married for decades. It's only that one night in Avimelech's house. That's what led to Yitzchak being born. So therefore, God made a miracle and made Yitzchak look exactly like Avraham. Genetics were so clear, so nobody could, even if somebody makes a joke, nobody's going to believe it because Yitzchak looked like Avraham. Okay, you ready for a thinking question? Who do you think, educated guess, who do you think the person was that was making those jokes, that was trying to say that Yitzchak was the one who was born from Avimelech? Any guesses? When I tell you who it is, it's going to be so obvious. But who has a vested interest to make Yitzchak not Avram's son?
Hashem.
Hashem? No, Hashem wants Yitzchak to be Avram's son. Who does not want Yitzchak to be Avram's son? Lot could have been a good guess here, but it's not Lot. Ideas? The Sepharno says it was Yishmael. It was Yishmael. Why Yishmael? Because Yishmael is Avram's firstborn son from the other marriage to Hagar, and Yishmael's the one that wants to take over. Him and his mother keep saying he's the legitimate heir. He's the Bachor. He's the guy that's supposed to be the leader of the Jewish people. So Yishmael is the one that's coming along and saying that, oh, Yitzchak is not really Avram's son, because if he can get rid of Yitzchak, he will be the one to be the sole heir for the land of Israel, and he's going to be the real Bechor. And we know that's not true. Yishmael gets sent away. But if we go back, Yishmael, why did Sarah send away Yishmael? So the Torah tells us because Yishmael was metzachek. He was laughing. What was he laughing about? So the Sephardim says he was laughing about Yitzchak's inheritance, saying Yitzchak is not really Avram's son. So in order for Yishmael not to be able to get away with it, God makes Yitzchak look exactly like Avraham. Okay, make sense? Cool, no? A little bit of a backstory. Okay, so that's the Midrash. Yitzchak looks like Avraham. But to get back to our first question of what made Yitzchak great, the Midrash takes it a step further. And the Midrash says that not only did they look the same, but they acted the same. So now we'll get to the answer you guys said, that Yitzchak dug wells. Says the Midrash, Yitzchak was the mirror image of Avraham. Everything that Avraham did, Yitzchak also did something very similar. The stories of their life overlap. We already said they were both involved with the Akedah. They were both involved in the binding of Isaac. Okay, good. That's one level. They both get married to a woman who can't have kids right away. They both have a Brit Milah. They both dig wells. They both, when there's a famine, go to Gerar. We see step by step that Yitzchak does almost the exact same thing that Avram does over and over and over again. So what's the lesson of Yitzchak? What's Yitzchak all about? Yitzchak is known, and this is the greatness of Yitzchak. Yitzchak is generation 2.0. And Yitzchak said, if I'm 2.0, if I'm the first son of a Jew, I'm the firstborn son who's actually Jewish from birth, my goal, he says, is to be as close to keep the tradition as close as possible. So while while Avraham is the trailblazer, everything is brand new. Yitzchak says, wow, my father gave me a little bit of a Torah, a little bit of good deeds to do. Let me try to follow his path exactly, because it's my job to give the tradition, to bring the tradition to the next generation. So we see he keeps doing exactly what Avram did over and over again, step by step, because he wants to keep as close as possible to his father's way of doing things, because he's the first child, the first tradition in Judaism. But on the other hand, Yitzchak is known to be, in character traits, in midot, the polar opposite of Avraham. We spoke in the past. What was Avraham's main character trait? He was chesed. He was all about kindness. He was about ahava, love of God. His character traits was like light. It was love. It was kindness, easygoingness. That's Avram Avinu. Yitzchak is known to be, in character traits, the polar opposite. He was known for his gvura, for his strength, justice, yirah, his fear of God. So Avram is known for his love of God, while Yitzchak is known for his fear of God. It's kind of like a yin and yang in character. The Kabbalah talks about each one's character traits, and then Yaakov is going to synthesize both of them down below. But Avram is love, Yitzchak is fear. And that's why for the Akedah, for the binding of Isaac, for Avraham, that's like a really hard test. How does God test somebody? When God really wants to test somebody, what he's going to do, he's going to find what is their character trait and test them. Can they hold back their character trait for the sake of God? So if Avram's all about chesed, all about kindness, to now say, go and slaughter your son, that's like the biggest test for somebody who has kindness. So that's like a really big character trait for Avraham. Yitzchak is the exact opposite. His character trait is awe of God, is fear of God. So if God says, die for me, Yitzchak says, of course I am, you're God. That's what yirah, that's what awe is all about. So Yitzchak doesn't have a problem with that. That's Yitzchak's base. That's so much less of a test, not only because he's a son, but also because it's yirah. That's what he's all about. You know what a test of Yitzchak is going to be? He's going to be tested on his love, on his chesed, on his kindness. Anybody know where in the Torah Yitzchak is tested for kindness? In my humble opinion, I think there's two main times when Yitzchak is tested to do kindness. Any have any guesses? If Yitzchak is all about justice and really following the halacha, following the deen, following strict justice, that's Yitzchak's like personality trait. When is Yitzchak tested that hold back your justice and instead be kind, be loving? Any ideas? Hard question. Okay, so I want to give two answers. One answer, a little bit far-fetched. Not far-fetched, a little bit like out there. And one answer, probably you guys should know. And when I say it, it's gonna be a lot clearer. The one that's a little bit more out there is there's a rabbinic teaching that Rashi brings down that last week's parsha, Avram sent his servant Eliezer to go find a wife for Yitzchak. Why do we need a wife right now? What's so special that all of a sudden her son has to get married? Sarah Imenu just died. So there's no more Jewish mother. And we know that in Judaism, there's always a duo. You have to have a husband-wife duo to do big things. Without Sarah Imenu, the second Sarah Imenu dies, Avram is no longer the guy trying to change the world. He kind of like takes a step back in the world. So Avram realizes that and says, it's time for me to bring a new mother to the Jewish people. So in a certain aspect, Rivka is gonna replace Sarah Imenu. And actually the Midrash says, or even the Gemara, the Midrash says that when Sarah died, there were miracles in her tent that disappeared. When Rivka entered the tent, all the miracles came back. So Rivka is like replacing Sarah as generation 2.0 mother. From a different aspect, Rivka is also replacing Avraham, because the tests of Rivka are all about doing kindness, are all about doing chesed. She has to give water to Eliezer, and she gives water to Eliezer's camels. Charlotte, you with me? There's a state teaching in Pirkei Avot, in Ethics of Our Fathers, that the world stands on three things. You know what it is? What are the three things the world stands on? You know it?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh,
Three things that the world stands on.
Ha'olam omed al shlosha devarim. The world stands on three things.
I don't know if this is like an opinion question or if there was actually like a specific three things that's like known.
There's a specific three things, but take a guess.
I don't know if I ever learned this. I don't know, like kindness.
Good. Chesed is one of them. Good. Two more. Anybody else know it? The world stands on three things.
Torah and Avodah.
Torah and Avodah. Torah, service of God, and kindness. Okay, Nisim, you said it nicely in Hebrew. How does it say kindness in Pirkei Avot? It doesn't just say chesed. It says two words.
I think it's Milut Hasadim.
Gemilut chasadim. What does gemilut mean? Anybody know? Gemilut chasadim. Gemilut means abundant kindness, like a lot of kindness. But gemilut is also the same letters, the root of the word, as gamal, as camels. The whole story of Rivka is about her kindness and her kindness of giving to the camels. The whole thing is hinted to. She's Mrs. Kindness, Mrs. Kindness. Who is she really replacing in character traits? She's replacing Avram in 2.0. And really, Yitzchak is replacing Sarah Imenu, who's a little bit more in the fear zone. Torah actually says that Sarah Begira, he's actually replacing her. So there's actually a feminine, masculine split when it comes to the character traits. But okay. Where does Yitzchak show his chesed? If he's all about justice and being strict in the rules, when is he more easygoing and show his love? So Avram sends his servant to go find a wife for Yitzchak. At the same exact time, says Rashi, Yitzchak went to go find a wife for his father Avraham. You guys know that Avram got remarried at the end of his life? Thumbs up if you heard that Avram gets remarried at the end of his life. So, good. Okay, good. Samuel, do you know he got married to? Who did he remarry?
I know the name, but I just can't. I don't remember it.
Nisim, you know the name?
I don't remember the name, but I think there's a story that it was actually Hagar.
Okay, good. There's a midrash that says it's Hagar. The Torah says he marries a lady named Keturah. He marries a new lady named Keturah. So either Avram had 3 wives or he had 2 wives. It's a good question. Was Avram polygamous or was he monogamous? So the truth of Avram's whole life, he really only wanted one wife. He wanted Sarah Imenu. And then Sarah says, I can't have kids, marry Hagar. He's like, I don't know. She's like, marry Hagar. He listens to his wife. And then his wife says, get rid of Hagar. He gets rid of Hagar. And then only after Sarah dies does he remarry Hagar according to the Midrash. But Hagar's name is called Keturah. Why is it called Keturah? So the rabbis say Hagar's name got changed because Keturah means from the language of Ketoret, of incense. The incense in the Beit HaMikdash on Yom Kippur that brings teshuva. She became a Baal Tshuva. She had messed with Sarah Imenu, but now she was on her way back. Now she's ready to be righteous again. Keturah also comes from the language of being tied. She had like tied a knot. What does that mean? That means that after she left Avram the first time, she never went with any other men. She was waiting, hoping Avram would take her back. But who brings her back? Yitzchak brings her back. Well, how does Yitzchak bring her back? So in last week's parasha, when Rivka, I'm saying a lot of stuff in this class today. I'm giving a lot of info. Most of what I'm saying is the actual verses of the Torah. I'm adding a little bit of midrash to give context, but I find there's a lot of verses that we just like read in the Torah that nobody ever pays attention to. So I'm just trying to give you like the bigger storyline, the little soap opera that's actually happening in the text of the Torah. So in last week's parsha, Rivka says, so Eliezer comes to bring Rivka to marry Yitzchak, and Eliezer says, Rivka, do you want to come back with me? She says, yes. He puts her on a camel, and they start walking back to Israel from Haran, from the area of like Mesopotamia, Iran, Iraq. They start walking back to the land of Israel. And as they're walking back, they get to a place called Be'er Lechai Ro'i. Now, if you read this verse in the Torah, you're like, what is this place? But if you pay attention to geography, you already learned about this place. Because the Torah already told us what happened at this place. What happened at this place? This was the place when Hagar ran away, and when Hagar was kicked away, this is where Hagar moved to. She moved to a place called Be'er Lechai Ro'i. So now when Rivka comes back to the land of Israel, who does she find? She finds Yitzchak, where Hagar lives. What's Yitzchak doing there? And that's when the rabbis say, oh, what is Yitzchak doing there? So now the Midrash adds to the pasuk and says he was bringing Hagar back because he realized now that his mother had died, Hagar is the best person. She had done Shuvah. Her name is now Keturah, like the incense. She's the best person to marry Avraham. So I was thinking that was a really big test for Yitzchak, because that's a real test of love and chesed. Because Hagar, she might have done all these really great things, but there's one thing she did that wasn't good. She kept attacking Yitzchak by saying, he's not the real heir. My son Yishmael is the real heir. So for Yitzchak to take a step to the side and say, wow, even though she tried to mess with me, I could be the bigger person, and I'm going to bring her back to my father, that's like a really big deal. That's one area where Yitzchak does chesed. What's the other area where Yitzchak does chesed? Now, this is, I think, the more main reason. The other area where Yitzchak does chesed is when it comes to his son Esav. We're going to meet Esav in this week's parsha, and Esav's going to do a lot of like terrible things. And there's a question amongst the rabbis that that Esav, did Yitzchak know Esav was evil or not? Famous question. Did Yitzchak know that Esav was evil or not? Some rabbis say that Esav fooled him completely. Other rabbis said that Yitzchak saw what was going on, but he thought maybe I could change my son. And so according to that approach, where is Yitzchak's chesed? Even though Yitzchak's personality is all about strict justice, when it came to his son Esav, he kept trying and trying and trying, would never kick him out. I was always hoping he could inspire his son Esav to be a better person. The Gemara tells us that he wasn't successful when it came to Esav. But in the future, when we, the Jewish people, are going to sin, and we're going to start acting like Esav, his prayers will be answered to save us from a lot worse stuff to happen. Okay, what was the point of that whole big backside story? First off, to learn a little bit of Chumash, but also because we said that what made Yitzchak great, he kept the tradition exactly. He did exactly what Avram did, but with one difference. His personality was totally different. If Avram was all about the love, Yitzchak was all about the fear. They had a total different personality. And the idea they say is that when it comes to Judaism, we all have the same Torah. We all have the same mitzvot. 613, we all try to do it. But our personalities are totally, totally different. And it's important for us to take our strengths and bring our strengths and put that into the actual Torah and actual mitzvot themselves. There actually is a teaching that says, while Avram made thousands of converts and followers, they didn't make it to the next generation. They left after Avraham. And one of the commentators says, why? Because Avram's character traits was only good for a chesed world. It didn't fit with a justice world. And those followers, they couldn't follow Yitzchak. But only after we had an Avram and a Yitzchak and then a Yaakov, where it's all different types of personalities, and they could all be Jewish, and they could all keep the Torah, now the Torah became so much richer that now everybody could really follow it. And now, when Yaakov's going to have his kids, all 12 kids are going to make it. He's not going to lose an Esav. He's not going to lose a Yishmael. They're all going to keep the Torah, be part of the Jewish people, because now there's space for everybody's personalities to make it. Okay. So we said that Yitzchak did what Avram did. But there's also one difference. While Yitzchak does what Avram does, in some cases, he does it a little bit more, what we say in Hebrew, metukan, a little bit more fixed. He does it a little bit better. He kicked it up a notch. Like, for example, Avram does a Brit Milah at 100 years old. Yitzchak does it at 8 days old. Avram digs wells. But what happens to Avram's wells? They get all filled up with dirt. They get messed over. Yitzchak digs wells, but his wells, they stay. They don't. There was a bit of a fight with that with the police team, but ultimately Yitzchak wins, and his wells stay as wells. Avram doesn't really like fight back at first with the wells until they attack him a little bit, until they mess with him. Yitzchak takes the upper hand, and he starts the fight against the people that are messing with his wells. He's a little bit tougher. We said Sarah couldn't have kids, Rivka couldn't have kids. But how does Avram fix it? By marrying Hagar at first, and that leads to all these problems with Ishmael. Yitzchak doesn't do that. What does he do? He just prays and prays and prays at the very start of our parasha, and God gives Rivka a kid right away. So in the case of Yitzchak, the marriage worked better. In the case of when they go to different cities, when they go to Grar, when they go to the Plishtim, Sarah gets taken captive. Rivka never gets taken captive. Rivka makes it out herself. So based on that, it's similar stories, but slightly better. We in the past we spoke about Avraham and his wife Sarah. I'm not sure if we mentioned in this class, but there's a famous idea that Avraham was so good to his wife Sarah. What does he do? He would always pitch her tent first, and we say beautiful. Avraham loves Sarah. Do you know what it says about Yitzchak and Rivka? Yitzchak, it says, loved Rivka. The first time we find love in the Torah is by Yitzchak and Rivka. It actually says the words, he loved Rivka. Oh, also, how does he get, when he was in with the Plishtim, while Rivka never got taken captive, Avimelech noticed they were married. How did they notice they were married? Because they were being metzachek, they were laughing with each other, they were being intimate with each other. Their marriage was much, much stronger. So a couple of air or ice on the outside, the Torah testifies to how great their marriage actually was. Okay, people, put your name in the chat. I want to take a 1 minute break. I got hiccups, so I want to get rid of those hiccups. I'll be back in 1 minute. Name in the chat, name in the chat. Okay, sorry about that, guys. But first off, hiccup advice. Anybody ever gets hiccups, foolproof plan, it always works. Lay down sideways, head up, take a straw, drink out of a straw, and after 2 seconds, hiccups are gone. It's actually a proven fact with how you breathe. Fine. People with me? Anybody still around? Charlotte, I got you. Anybody else got some videos? We get to see each other a little bit? I'm like talking to boxes, people. There we go. Okay, we got some people. Okay, there we go. There we go. There we go. Okay, good. Good. I see some people. Awesome. Okay, good. Okay, good. So we're talking about Yitzchak, the greatness of Yitzchak. We just spoke about his love for Rivka Imenu. They actually even demonstrated a little bit more than you see with other people. Good. Another area about Yitzchak, which makes him different than everybody else. Yitzchak, for those of you who are all a bunch of Zionists, you can actually read a whole Zionist approach to Yitzchak. Yitzchak is not allowed to leave the land of Israel. When there was a famine, he ends up going to Avimelech in Gerar, in the Gaza area, but originally he wanted to go to Egypt, because that's the first thing that his father had done in the first famine. But when he gets to Avimelech, God tells him, you're not allowed to go any further. You, after the Akedat Yitzchak, you are the holy Yitzchak, you're not allowed to leave, you got to stay in Israel. Yitzchak is also known to work the land. He's the farmer. There's this whole if any of you have Rabbi Kahn for Parsha class, he likes to talk about this idea that in the Torah, you have this big fight between farmers and shepherds. We normally think of the shepherds as the more holy ones. Moshe is the shepherd, Avram's a shepherd, Yaakov's a shepherd. And if we go back to the first story of brothers, the book of Bereshit is brothers who don't get along. The first story of brothers who don't get along is Cain and Hevel, where Cain kills Hevel. Hevel was a shepherd, and Cain is a farmer. So on the surface, we think of the farmer as the more negative image, and the shepherd as the more holy image. But the truth is, we had some very holy farmers. Who was our holy farmer? One of them was Yosef. Yosef, who had the dreams of the grain that we're going to be able to be in the land of Israel, working the land. Who else was a farmer? Yitzhak is a farmer. Yitzhak is outside farming the land, and in our parsha it says he plants, and then God blessed him. Mea She'arim, 100 times came up. Though the city Mea She'arim gets the name from this week's parsha that God blesses Yitzchak's farm work. He's working the land. He's the kibbutznik, working and growing the stuff in Israel because he's saying Israel is our land. The shepherds, they say it's not ours yet. They were living, in the future it's going to be ours. After Egypt, it'll be ours. But Yitzchak has a special connection. Even his name, Yitzchak, is future tense. I'm going to laugh in the future. It's the times of Mashiach. We sing in the Shir HaMalot before on benching on Shabbat. According to the Nusach of Ashkenaz, that in the future we're going to be singing, we're going to be reaping the produce, and we're going to be singing, we're going to be laughing. That's Yitzchak. That's the laughing in the future. He's the guy living in Israel. He's the guy doing big things. Now, another place that we find that he's a farmer is when Rivka came to see him. And even though what happened, Rivka came to see him. Rivka's on the camel. She sees Yitzchak, and then what happens? Says the Torah, she falls, either on purpose, by accident. She just saw something that was so unbelievable. Either Yitzhak was so good looking the first time she saw him, or maybe she saw something very powerful, and she falls back and covers her face out of modesty because she saw this great man Yitzchak. The commentators say, where was Yitzchak? Yitzchak was outside in the Sadeh. It says in the Torah, he's in the field. Why is he in the field? He's working. What's he doing in the field? It says that he's praying. Because when a person works the land, you really got to pray to God. God's the one that gives you your rain. God's the one that gives you that water that falls down over there. And if you don't have it, you're not going to survive. If you mess with the harvest, it's not going to work. The truth is, yesterday at Israel Speed, for those that are in Israel, we had a really big zechut. We were able to go and pick avocados for a farmer who doesn't have workers right now because all of his workers are busy fighting the war right now in Israel. So we were the angels that were sent to go pick his avocados, because that's when you pray to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What am I going to do? The produce is ready now. And if anybody knows anything about avocados are the most complicated things. They're only good for like a week. They're too hard, then they're too soft. You don't pick them right. You don't use them right. You really need to make sure you're going to pick them at the exact time so you don't lose your produce. And now's the time. So, okay, fine. So that's Yitzchak praying in the field. The person, the Emunah, the person that's more tied to the land of Israel. Okay. That being said, our original question was, but Yitzchak's stories, everything sounded really good. We just built them up really big. But it's not those big trailblazing stories we find with Avraham and Yaakov. So does that mean that generation 2.0 doesn't have a trailblazer? Doesn't have this massive Lech Lecha person? So generation 2.0 does have a Lech Lecha person, but it's not Yitzchak. Any ideas who it could be? Generation 2.0 does have a great Avram figure that does the big things out in the open, but it's not Yitzchak. Any ideas? Who's the 2.0 like superhero? Come on, ladies. Ladies, you should get this, ladies. Ladies. Guys, it's 2023. You should get it too. Who is it? It's Rivka. Rivka is the trailblazer of 2.0. Because who is Rivka? Rivka's the lady who grew up in the house of Lavan with evil people, with Betuel. They're like evil, evil people. But she becomes this tzadeket who makes it out of the house and it's like this superpower, leaves it all behind. Lech Lecha, moves to the land of Israel. This is like big, big stuff. Rivka is that Avram Avinu figure, is that Yaakov Avinu figure. It's actually Rivka in the 2.0 generation who does the big things out in the open. Yitzchak, it's more, you have to look into it much deeper to see it. Similar to Sarah Imenu, you have to see behind the scenes. Also similar to Rachel Imenu. While Rachel, the Torah expounds upon it, but you see a lot of what Rachel does is also through silence. But in the 2.0 generation, the male female are flipped in who's doing what they're doing. Okay, you know what? Let's do one last idea for today. And I want to open up the chat. Okay, unmute yourself for a second and let me know if, I'm not sure like who has Hebrew on their computer, who doesn't have Hebrew on their computer, but do people see this? You guys see that? What
Yeah,
does
we
it say? Who can read it? Who could read it? Who could read it?
I don't know if it's Asu
Esav?
or Esav.
Good. Asu Esav. I wanted to write Esav. I wrote it that way without the yud on purpose. But good. Esav. That's how it's written most of the time in the Torah. Also, you can read it as Asu. We're gonna get to that in a second. And we have ourselves. Who do we have over here?
Yaakov.
Yaakov. We have Esav and Yaakov. Who can tell me this week's parsha they're born? Who could tell me why Yaakov is named Yaakov?
Because that was Eke.
Because Yaakov grabbed onto the Ekev. If you take the name Yaakov, the last three letters of his name is Ekev. Ekev means heel. Because the famous story that in the womb, they were fighting in the womb, and they each are fighting who's going to be the firstborn, who's going to be the firstborn. Esav comes out first, and what does Yaakov do? He grabs onto the Ekev, the last three words of the name of the three letters of the word Yaakov. He grabs onto the Ekev of Esav, and therefore he's called Yaakov because he grabs onto the heel. They also say that spiritually, Yaakov saw himself on the bottom, and he wanted to spend his whole life growing spiritually, trying to make it to the top. And eventually, he's going to make it to the top. He's going to become like an angel, and his name is going to become Israel, and his name is going to be changed. But in the beginning, he starts off with the name Yaakov because he grabs onto the heel of Esav. Anybody know why Esav is named Esav? So we said Yaakov is named Yaakov because he wants to grab onto the Ekev. Does anybody know why Esav is named Esav?
Isn't it because he looked like he was already like
Yeah,
fully
okay.
grown?
Good. He looked like he was fully grown, like he was ready-made. How do you say ready-made in Hebrew?
Asa.
Asa is to
Yaakov.
make. Asa is to make. Very good. That's asu, they made. But ready-made is, let me write it out over here. Asui. Asui means ready-made. Okay, guys, I'm going to say something that's very cute and very simplistic, but it's extremely deep, and the Kabbalah loves this. So the deep idea, share this with people this Shabbat, and they're going to love you for this. Here's the question. Why is Yaakov named Yaakov and not Ekev? His name should be Ekev. Call him Ekev. Call him Akev. Why is he called Yaakov? And if Esav is Asui, he's ready-made. He's ready-made physically. He's ready-made spiritually. He doesn't want to grow anymore. Esav's happy the way he is. If Esav is really Asui, then why don't you call Esav Asui? That would be the better name for him. Anybody guess? If you look at the chats, look at the names: Esav, Yaakov, Ekev, and Asui.
You need something with like the yud.
Exactly, the Yud. There was a guy named Ekev. There was a baby named Ekev that was in the womb. But what did Ekev do? He grabbed on to the Yud of Asui. When he grabbed onto the heel of Esav, what's the heel of the word Asui? What's the last letter, the heel of the word Asui, the name Asui? It's the Yud. Ekev grabbed onto the Yud of Asui, and Asui became Esav, and Ekev became Yaakov. And in this cute little idea of the letters, we have the whole story that's going to take place throughout our parsha of Yaakov first buying the birthright, and then stealing the blessings. The letter Yud is the first letter of God's name, Yud Kei Vav Kei. It's the holy letter Yud, the world that of Olam Haba is Yud. The whole story of Yaakov and the blessings and the birthright is all in their letters. Cool? People, that was big stuff. Shabbat Shalom. Or have a great day.
Thank you.
You.
Yeah, have a
Yes.
nice day.